Thank you, Presiding Officer. There's significant evidence to suggest our net zero ambitions are at serious risk unless we have a better focus on mobilising the commitment and talents of women in all areas of policy making, leadership and action. Research shows that women are more committed to recognising the need to reach net zero than men, despite being sidelined in many aspects of the work required. At COP26 held here in Scotland in 2021, climate change and gender equality was one of the topics being discussed. A coalition of women's groups called for women to play a greater role. Yet here in 2025, we must still repeat those calls. Perhaps because of this, there are some positive actions being taken in Scotland, such as those from Scottish Renewables. Their New Voices campaign, sponsored by Ørsted, provides a year-long series of workshops for 10 participants from underrepresented groups. This year, 6 of the cohort are women. Yet Scottish Renewables know there's a long way to go and point out women continue to face wide and varying barriers to equality throughout their careers, with a lack of encouragement to enter traditionally male-dominated fields such as STEM. There's been so far a lack of focus on the women involved in the renewable supply chain in Scotland. Presiding Officer, this must change. Their recognition of the issue is supported by international research. The global consultancy Oliver Wyman published research claiming that although 1/5 of major corporations had pledged to meet net zero, albeit from 2050, few actively considered or included women in their climate action plans. Now, while diversity and climate change were viewed as priorities, astonishingly, the research notes almost none have considered how linking the two management priorities could accelerate their transition to net zero emissions. Some companies, such as Scottish Power, are addressing the problem and run programmes ranging from international leadership to setting up in-company women networks. As they say, the more we can do as an industry and a society to show the opportunities available to women, the more beneficial it will be on our journey to net zero. But one of the problems in the political sphere is the dominance of overly simplistic zero-sum thinking. This is beautifully explained in the blog by Professor Graham Roy and Sir Anton Muscatelli in an article published by the National Institute of Social and Economic Research this week. From my perspective, we must not see encouraging more women into policy making or leadership roles as if in a zero-sum game with men. It's all about improving the overall impact for everyone's benefit. I'm also extremely grateful to Dr. Hannah Salomon from Glasgow University for sending me an advance copy of her excellent blog entitled "Where are the women in the UK's green energy transition?" When looking at the issue of underrepresentation of women, she points out, this marginalisation of women in green energy is problematic from two perspectives. First, it threatens the success of the energy transition from a workforce perspective. Secondly, it withholds the benefits that come along with the fast growth of the green energy sector, financial, social and political, from women. And I'm particularly grateful to Hannah for offering to work with me in pursuing this agenda further. Last February, the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts reported in a UK government report regarding public awareness and behaviour towards climate change and net zero. It revealed that men and women think and behave differently when it comes to climate change. Some 93% of men claimed awareness of net zero, but only 78% expressed concern. In contrast, 85% of women both claimed awareness and concern about net zero. Furthermore, men are more likely than women to anticipate a negative economic impact from a transition to net zero. In other words, suggesting men are more likely to see the transition to net zero as a zero-sum game. Despite women being more concerned, as I've outlined, it's largely men who drive policy making and lead our major businesses. Let me quickly highlight with a practical example an article by 3 Cambridge University scholars published less than a month ago and entitled "How Gender Influences the Motivation and Action Towards Climate Change," reported on the results of an in-depth investigation from a large construction company. The results give us a clear insight into the difference between male and female actions. Unsurprisingly, where a male culture predominates, as in construction, there's a lower action focus on climate change. Not only that, but the ways in which actions are carried out is important. And the study notes, given that women are more likely to display altruism and empathetic decision-making, it's crucial to incorporate them in key societal decisions, action and plans. And I would argue that how we get to net zero, as well as the actions we take, are important, and surely empathy and understanding are part of that. We must deliver change through people and not to people. In summary, all the prevailing evidence suggests that increasing the engagement of women in net zero policy work, whether in business or in government, will accelerate actions towards net zero. And of course, this debate is about the future, not just the past. A future that I want to see shaped by the active engagement of all sections of our society. It's of course not just the energy sector, but all sectors of the economy and business that need to change. From the initial small-scale start-ups to large established corporations, the need to focus on net zero is considerable, but action can be accelerated by ensuring women have a much stronger role to play. How important they are in Scotland, it can't be left to organisations such as Women's Enterprise Scotland to fight for change, although their pioneering work is to be greatly welcomed. So I'd like to ask the Cabinet Secretary 2 questions. First, what is the government's strategy for involving more women in working specifically towards net zero? And secondly, what research does the government currently support into the role of women in pursuing net zero? Presiding Officer, in closing, I don't see this as a party political issue, and I've deliberately avoided any party comment in my motion and speech. This, I believe, is an issue where members of all parties should and can come together and argue for more women to be engaged in net zero leadership and action. This, I concede, of course, is not an issue that can be left to government alone. This issue, our shared issue, is one for all of humanity.